Hey everybody, welcome to Crazy Tech Lab, and I've got a great video for you today because we are going to be checking out the brand new NZXT H9 case here that we've got. It's the first dual chamber case from NZXT. I think you probably agree that it looks pretty good. It's got that wraparound glass front and side panels, some really cool cooling going on as well in this case. This is the kind of like the cheaper version, the basic version, which is the H9 Flow. There is an H9 Elite as well, so that one comes with some extra paraphernalia. This model, though, the cheaper version, still costs $160, so it's definitely a premium case as far as case pricing goes, and the H9 Elite will set you back $240. Thankfully, though, I've been very impressed with what I've seen so far, so what we're going to do in this video is go have a walk around with the case, look at its features, take a look inside at what is actually going on in terms of the cooling arrangement, because there's some interesting stuff here, as well as a massive vented rear panel here. Like the whole panel is one big vent with a massive dust filter behind it, so some crazy stuff going on. And then we will see how it compares in terms of cooling to some other cases and come to some conclusions in the end. In a future video, we are going to be taking a look at the NZXT F140 RGB Duo. It's brand new RGB 140mm fans as well, so we'll be having a proper look at them with some testing in a future video. So that's it for the intro. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe on this video. Lots more videos coming up over the course of the next few weeks, and some very, very interesting stuff as well. Today, though, it's all about the H9 Flow, and we are going to be putting it through its paces in this video. So first, a word from our sponsor. Our sponsor today is scdkey.com, where right now you can get some great deals on software such as Windows 10, Windows 11 and Microsoft Office. Even better news is that I have a discount code to share with you guys that will get you even more money off this software. So Microsoft Windows 10 Pro, for example, which is fully upgradable for free to Windows 11 if you want to do that. All you have to do is click buy now, enter the code CRT25 into the promotion code box, click apply, and the UK price, for example, will drop from £17 all the way down to just £12.76, and you'll see similar discounts elsewhere in other currencies as well. Once purchased, you'll want to head to your order page and copy the Windows 10 Pro key shown at the bottom of the page. When you're in Windows, you want to move your mouse over to the Start button, right-click, go to Settings, then Update and Security, and then move up to Activation, and finally, click on Change Your Product Key, copy and paste your brand new product key into the box, click Next, then click Activate, and your Windows 10 installation is now activated. Finally, you can do exactly the same thing with Office 2021 Professional by clicking the Buy button using code CR25 again, click Apply, and you'll get a hefty discount on Office as well. Thanks again to SCDKey for sponsoring this video, and you can see a whole bunch more links and discounts in the description below. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the case first of all on the exterior to see what gubbins we've got, and then we'll switch to the interior. So to start with then, there's this massive glass side panel, which as you can see is not only a bit stiff to get off, but also is edge to edge, top to bottom, which is pretty impressive. So that's why the case looks so good, and that's just one big slab of tempered glass. So a pretty hefty case. It weighs quite a bit when you're moving it around because of all this glass, the front panel as well. So that panel obviously removable, very, very easily, tool-free, just with a single thumb screw at the back, so it's a great design. The front panel is removable. You just need to remove these screws down here, and then that will lift off. There's no real benefit to that at the moment, but I wouldn't put it past NZXT to offer like a flow option here. Like a vented panel. I'm surprised they didn't do that anyway, given that this is called the Flow, but I would much rather have the kind of wraparound acrylic design, and then maybe have the option of fitting a vented panel. But to be honest, I don't think that's going to be an issue for this case, airflow. I mean, because what you've got in here is just absolutely crazy, but which we'll get to in a second. So looking at the bottom, you can see those fan mounts down the bottom. You have a row of up to 3 120mm fans or 360mm radiator, or two 140mm fans and a 280mm radiator down in there. So if we look at the underside, this is something I really like, are the dust filters on this case. So this one here just simply slides out, as we've seen on a few other cases, so that's very, very easy to deal with. The others are actually magnetic, which we will have a look at in a second. So if we just go around to the rear, we have fairly typical looking dual chamber case. We've got the power supply mounted up here, so that kind of runs through into the case. You've got the additional fan here, so there are 4 in total. We've just seen 320mm ones on the side that we'll look at in a second, and we have another 120mm fan as acting as an exhaust in the rear of the case, so positive air pressure all round. And then if we go around to the far side of the case, you can see that enormous vented side panel, and I think this is a really, really great design. I mean, I'd be worried about air kind of seeping in, seeping out where it's not meant to, but we're dealing with positive air pressure here, so what we're hoping to see is just a very well ventilated case. And if we pop this off, as you can see, the whole thing is just one big mesh. And what I really, really like about this and the filter in the roof is that they are magnetic. So you just kind of slide it across and the entire thing comes out ready for your vacuum cleaner. So that's a really, really neat option. It fits together really well. It's simple to use and keeps your PC dust free, despite the fact that that entire panel is ventilated. So looking inside, as we can see, these fans here are all acting as intakes. So they are going to be creating all that positive air pressure, but there's a whole bunch of more stuff that you can do inside as well. And if we just move it around slightly, you've got space for 2 hard disks in here, which is good to see, and a whole stack of 2.5-inch SSDs as well. I'll put the full specifications up on the screen now if you want to check out those. And the power supply mount doesn't look like it has any anti-vibration mountings, which is a bit of a shame. That's probably my only downside there that I can see as far as general case features and things go, is I would have liked to have seen some rubber pads or something somewhere just to reduce vibration. In terms of the cable routing, as you can see here, there are lots and lots of Velcro straps in here, and of course round in this big chamber here. So I really, really like the cable routing, and because these are kind of hidden behind the SSD panel, when you put the vented chamber, or vented side panel should I say, back on like that, you can just about see that white strip going down there. That is that white strip there, and that means that your cables will be hidden. So there's a good amount of forethought having gone in to this case, which is really, really good to see. So as we can see down here, we have a fully removable fan mount, which is always great to see because it just means that your radiator or fans that you want to install can be removed very, very easily, like so. That just comes straight out like that. Can't remove it all the way out because the fans are pre-wired and cable tied, so that's always really, really great to see that all those things are removable. And as you can see, you can just disconnect those cables and you'll have this thing out in like a matter of seconds. So there's no fiddling around inside your case trying to get all these things removed. It looks like it's going to be a very, very easy case to work with. So if we just look at the roof section now, we have this large panel here that we're just going to pop off. And it does just pop off. There's no screws, no thumb screws, just those pop-in sections, very, very much like the NZXT H1 and the H1 V2 and all the recent cases from NZXT. I just love that design. And again, if I flip around to this panel here, we've got a, I think it's magnetic, yeah, just a very large magnetic dust filter there that comes off like so, so it's super easy to work with. So as we can see in the roof, we've got another removable fan section here. Again, space for 320mm fans, or a 360mm radiator, or a 280mm radiator, or 240mm fans. And again, that mount there is removable too. So the front panel, we are looking at 2 USB 2 ports, and we do have a USB Type-C port. I am just going to double check now what standard this is, at least in terms of the cable. And do we have a full fat Type-C cable in there? Yes, we do. So it's a full fat Type-C cable, which is great news. There's no kind of cheaping out and going the standard USB 3 route, the Gen 1 route. So that's pretty much it for the case walkaround. So all that's left to do now is to build something in here and carry out the thermal testing. If there's one issue with the H9, it is probably this. It is the fact that when the power supply is installed, it completely obscures the CPU area cut out on the motherboard tray. So not a massive issue, but it is if you've already built your system and you want to swap out your cooler, you're going to have to remove the power supply, and that's just going to be a bit of a faff. I think it would have been much easier to have the power supply located down here at the bottom of the case, just to avoid that area. And then most people probably aren't even using hard disks these days anyway, but the hard disk is going to be much easier to remove and detach than your power supply is, because if you've done a reasonable job with the cable tidying, then as you can see, it's going to be all kind of tied up, and it's going to be very difficult to actually remove it out of there. So that's probably my biggest gripe with the NZXT H9. Moving on to the thermal results now then, and unlike quite a few other places, I do actually want to compare the H9 against another case, because I think that's important for any testing. I don't think you can review a product or promote it or do anything else if you haven't actually tested it against other ones. So that's a note to all you people buying stuff from influencers and all those kind of things. You do need to compare a case against another one. So the H9 Flow, 65 degrees C, and the H7 Flow, which is the case that I decided to test against here, actually managing to knock 2 degrees C off the CPU temperature. Now, that comes about because the fan in the H7 is much closer to that heatsink. It's also in the direction of airflow of that case, which is front to back, whereas the H9 is very much a vertical airflow arrangement, kind of. It does have those fans blowing in from the sides, but they're just blowing against the side panels, so they're not really aiding the airflow inside the case so much. They're pumping air into it, they're aiding positive pressure, but there's no substitute for directing airflow at your hardware. So that's why the H7 Flow manages to knock 2 degrees C off the H9 7 Flow CPU temperature. Moving on to the GPU temperature, and I carried out 2 tests here with the H9. First of all, in its stock configuration with just the 3 side fans and the rear fan, and there it managed to match the H7 Flow. But it's worth remembering that the H7 only has 1 front fan, and that is pointing at the GPU. The H9 has 3 fans, but they're mounted in the side panel, so they're not pointing directly at the graphics card. So again, that's why the H7 is able to keep pace with the more expensive, larger, better airflow equipped case there. So the next thing obviously is to take advantage of the H9's lower fan mounts, and here I added 2 NZXT AER 120mm fans to the bottom of the case, and sure enough, this did help drop the GPU temperature by 2 degrees C, and that's not insignificant, because dropping a GPU temperature by 2 degrees does require a fair amount of work. So the ability of the H9 to do that with the addition of a couple of extra fans in the bottom is a really good feature, and that would probably be even more useful with a more powerful graphics card such as an RTX 4080 or something like that, where the graphics card will not only be closer to those bottom fans, because those are just enormous graphics cards, but there's a whole lot more heat to deal with as well. So the hardware, if you're interested here, as I mentioned, was an RX 6700 XT, that's a Radeon. The processor was a Ryzen 5 1600X overclocked to about 3.8 gigahertz, just to kind of fix it in place with a manual overclock, still generating a fair amount of heat, as you can see, so it doesn't really make too much difference which CPU you use. And the cooler was a Thermaltake tower cooler with a single 120mm fan, so a fairly typical setup. So what do we make of the H9 Flow then? Well, I really like this case. It is pretty big. I'm a small form factor fan, but even though it is enormous compared to something like a Meshlicious or something like that, it is a very attractive case and looks absolutely fantastic once you kit it out with some RGB lighting, and of course you want to kind of kit it out with some white goodies in terms of graphics cards and motherboards as well maybe. I think it looks absolutely brilliant. So in terms of the price, it is maybe around the price that I would have pitched it at myself, which means that it's not undercutting everyone else in terms of value, but I think it still represents pretty good value for what it is. You're getting a whole bunch of fans included as standard. You've got 3 in the side panel, 1 in the rear. That's more than enough to actually deal with the cooling in this case. You've got loads of room for expansion in there, whether you're going for an air-cooled case or a liquid-cooled one, and there's plenty of room for either of those options, which is great news, depending on whether you're coming at it from starting out with your first PC case and maybe want to get water cooling in the future, or you have a couple of radiators and a pump, etc., that you want to fit straight into this case. You get a fantastic view of the inside of the case through those side panels, and it's pretty easy to use as well. The only thing you need to be aware of is that cable tidying, because you can kind of see a lot of the cables behind the vented side panel through those vents, but NZXT has done a pretty good job of trying to hide those to some extent. So I'd like to thank NZXT for sending this fabulous case over, and I can highly recommend it. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and we'll be back in a future video. See you soon.